people like Rob will say things like the phony, the Russian investigation, and it's like,
but
dude,
it happened. It's
how?
just legitimate.
And even aside from that, how many people? Like, it was like 6 major figures. What was it? Like Gates, Papadopoulos, Cohen, Manafort, Stone. Like, these are people that are like in, well, not now because of the pardons, but like a lot of these people were in federal prison, like, because they were fucking guilty, dog. I hate that, I feel like my whole life I've been a useful idiot for other groups of people. I do that really well, I guess. It just kind of disappoints me. Because I was so confident in saying things like, oh, like, okay. Because like a lot of people, especially like my mom arguing with her, she's like, oh, you know, like a lot of Democrats, a lot of the Democrats, they just hate America. That's all they care about is just hating America. And it's like, Mom, it's not about hating America, okay? It's about helping people. It's not about hating rich people, okay? It's about helping poor people. But like, I don't know, man. Dylan.
The only one and only Lego head.
The one and only.
You know, you want to know about that insult? When I heard it, it really hurt because it was so true. That it hurt. It really hit the
Your
home.
head is made out of Legos?
It's so square though.
Oh, who cares?
It's a legitimate Lego block.
It's like a defining trait. You're like unique.
It's true.
You know you can tell if a cartoon is good or not?
How's that?
It's if you can tell who the characters are just by the silhouettes.
Ooh. Wow. You sure are smart, Destiny. That's why so many people watch you.
Thanks. Thank you. Well, what's up? How you doing?
So, I was doing call-ins on Wednesday, and something peculiar happened. And they said that you had a talk with the Vosh, right?
Yeah,
and
I sure did. We had
and it was something about line, and I don't really care to watch it, right?
Okay, you're not missing
But
much.
it's for legitimate reason. But I had like 3 hours of callers who were making the argument to me, and I don't know how this has to connect to this. Is that lying is a legitimate thing that the left should do for narrative reasons and to win the fight, and that if we lie and do stuff like Rush Limbaugh, then we can use that to do good. And even though lying is bad, it's for a good cause. And I'm just standing there knowing the type of stuff Rush Limbaugh caused, knowing what lying can do, just baffled that I did 3 hours of callers who were telling me we should lie.
Well, it's a crazy world we live in, huh?
Well, I'm just here to ask you, what the fuck? Why is this going on? I thought the point was we're the left and we do what we do because we don't like to lie.
Okay, this is partially my fault, but it basically, I think this idea basically comes from a very narrow understanding of consequentialism, or more specifically, I guess, utilitarianism. Have you ever heard the phrase, the ends justify the means?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, okay, so one of the problems with the ends justifying the means is that oftentimes people don't always consider what the ends are, because they have a very narrow understanding of what the means were. So, as an example, I give the same example every time. My audience has heard this a million times, so bear with me. As an example, let's say that I want to kill one person to save 2 people, and I'm going to say that that's moral, because I'm saving more people than I'm killing, right? On its face, that looks good, right? The ends justify the means. But the problem is, you sneak something into the end there, and the end is that it's okay to kill somebody if you can save 2 people by killing 1 person. That's always going to be okay. You bring that along with you to the end. And the problem is that if we were to construct a society like that, with those ends in mind, everything would become chaotic, right? Nobody would trust anybody. People would be murdering people for organs, et cetera, et cetera. Everything would just be complete chaos.
I could kill like some rich person, like in I don't know, Bangkok or whatever.
Or you could kill a poor person and take their organs and save people, right?
True. Or kill like one person with let's say I make $30,000 a year. I kill them, take all their savings, and give it to a bunch of people in Central Africa that probably saved 10 lives from disease or something.
Sure, yeah, you could construct a million things like that, yeah. So I think that whole lying is good to help our side it's just a very narrow understanding of consequentialism. Because on one end, it's well, as long as something good happens, is it really that bad? It's well, in one situation, maybe not. But if we were to do it over and over and over and over again, or if we were to say it's okay to do it, then you've kind of made lying permissible, and that causes a whole bunch of stuff to break down. To be as fair as I can be, after having my conversation with Vosh and him getting a lot of blowback for that kind of take, apparently he's walked that back now, so he doesn't believe in it anymore, even though I'm pretty sure he believed in it before. But
do Do you think there's any legitimacy to the idea of now? You're not going to hear from me that Rush Limbaugh was a good person. I just did a giant thread about all the
Mm-hmm.
bad stuff he did,
Mm-hmm.
and I know you have no love for Rush Limbaugh. But do you think there's any legitimacy to the idea of you making shocking and sometimes maybe revolting statements to get attention to you, and then when everybody is looking at you because you just said something stupid, you use that attention to try to bring them over to your side, right? The example that was made to me by like 3 different callers was Hassan's comments about 9/11, and the idea was like that was bad, but maybe then all those people re-examined 9/11 or then watched the rest of Hassan's content from that, and therefore brought them over to the left, yada yada yada.
You can't really say that. That's another very like ends just. It's really hard to do. It's really hard to say that some things are immoral as long as we're serving some greater end. Because you really got to be careful what you run to with those arguments, because so much bad shit can be justified at that point, right? Like, what the fuck? Oh, sorry. Have you listened to Dave Chappelle's fuck? It was called like 834. It was however long.
No,
George
because he's
Floyd
evil
is.
now or something, right?
Wait, is he what? Is that a thing?
Yeah, I don't know. Didn't he make like a trans joke or something?
Fuck, that's
I don't
old.
remember.
You're older. All right, fuck. I was gonna say Chappelle made a joke. Actually, it wasn't even part of that skit. It was in part of another skit. But Chappelle made a joke that it was really good that some little boy got killed by the cops, and not a joke, but a longer thing. And his overall statement was that like that kid getting killed kind of like catalyzed a movement that was like really positive for civil rights, basically. And so he kind of brings up basically like this kind of topic, right? Like maybe this is okay if there's like some greater end being served. Emmett Till was the child's name.
Yeah, Emmett Till. He's the person who has their grave used for target practice by white supremacists, right?
Jesus, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
But that kind of stuff is yeah, I don't know. I'm not comfortable with that. Yeah, I'm just not comfortable with that.
Well, here's another thing that isn't talked about, right? Like this is the same problem I have with revolutionary ideas, is being like after looking at the Syrian civil war, right? And what happened there, and the incredible amount of people who've died, and it's and like what happened to the Kurds and the SDF, some that like affected me a lot emotionally, and seeing that, and then seeing people like so like ready to like, yeah, let's do it, let's throw down, knowing that, let's say that if you were to win your revolution, let's completely go through the mental math and just say it would be better, it would be a better world if they would do it. What if you just fail?
Well, that's the thing too. Revolutions like guarantee regime change, but not to your regime, right? Like assuming you overthrow the government, like you have no guarantee that the good guys are going to be the ones in government next, right? Who the fuck knows?
And that's assuming you win, right? Because
Yeah.
if you look at Syria, right, like it maybe you could make the say that if the SDF get decent negotiating power, then they can negotiate maybe like a Kurdistan in Iraq situation where they have a regional government, but the odds of that have decreased with Trump's backstabbing, obviously, which is why it's one of the worst things he did in office. But for the vast majority of Syrians, the revolution is dead. Assad won. So
and a lot of those homes are totally fucking destroyed.
All those homes, all those people who can never return home, all the people who outed themselves as anti-Assad are now going to forever have that mark on them. The people who were had barrel bombs dropped on them, the people who were shot and killed, the protesters who were originally shot and killed, did they die in vain? And now the lasting remnants of the FSA are now backed by Turkey, whose militias are pulling politicians out of cars and executing them. So you look at that situation, you say, yeah, Assad was bad, and Assad's terrible, but holy fucking shit, this is awful.
Yeah, I don't think I think a lot of people just don't realize how fucked things can be. It's really
and that's
funny.
not me to downplay what Assad was. Like,
Yeah,
Assad's
of
a
course.
monster, and I support, of course.
Yeah, of course,
any opposition to him. I'm just saying the situation right now is terrible.
I think a lot of people, especially Americans, I'd say a lot of people, especially a lot of people in the Western world, just don't really know how fucked things can get. Like, for instance, I don't know if you saw things. I don't know if you saw that picture that's going around that compares like these are American shelves after one little snowstorm and compared to Venezuela guys. Have you seen pictures like that?
That stuff pisses me off.
Yeah, like they're like I had a guy that showed up on my stream to talk to his son about the Venezuela stuff, and this kid was like crying because his entire family's life savings was destroyed when their economy collapsed.
I watched that video. That video was hard to watch.
And this is just one straight of many. And there are stories of like Venezuelans having to eat like fucking rats and shit on the street because this country was destroyed. And you know, like lefty, I don't want to say just just lefties, but that's what I'm talking about right now, I guess, will make the joke that like, oh, well, look, in America, you know, sometimes our stores run out of supplies during literally the biggest like pandemic that's happened in the past like fucking, you know, however many years. Like, Jesus Christ, like this is your go-to comparison is that America in like the worst days of its existence are like, you know, the average days during countries like going through months of turmoil. Like, I don't know if this is what your winning argument, Chief.
The thing that really gets me about this too is when we talk about this, it isn't lefties in this country who have the mass preservative guns. They're not. It's not lefties in this country who have been prepping for the last few decades for that dream scenario, quote unquote. It's doomsday preppers, white nationalists, groups like fucking Adam Waffin's a bad example, but groups like that, right? These crazy far right militia groups, which are absolutely terrifying. And of course, if at the end of the day, like I don't know, like the worst comes, it's not like we don't defend ourselves, but this is something that should be avoided at all costs. And I don't know, I don't know, some of it just really angers me, but a lot of it's also because it's not like any of this I see in the real world, right?
Yeah, man, I hope so. I don't know, dude. I said that a lot, but now I'm kind of wondering how much of it is seeping into the real world. I have a friend that like I slowly watched her. I bragged about this girl a long time ago because she's like past the bar, she's a lawyer and everything, and she was like one of my like real life friends. And it was like, dude, when I would talk to her about like tankies and shit, she'd be like, these people are crazy. But like I've been watching her I've been watching her Instagram feed over the past like several months, and like very slowly she's been posting more kind of crazy shit. She's posting like a ton of tweets from that. Do you know Sean King?
Yeah, Sean King is the I don't know what to call him,
all I know is I see a lot of really crazy fucking lefty tweets from that guy pop up, like just some pretty great, like she's been like starting to post more and more shit like that, and then like I remember like we went out to lunch and I just had conversations with her where like her politics are getting like more and more crazy, and it's just like fuck, like no way, it can't be happening.
I guess the thing is, I think there's a general partisan increase in the United States, and I don't know what I mean, I've talked to. There's a lot of man, I could talk about this for hours, but there's a few examples I could point to. I think I've already told you about the time that I think I lost a job opportunity because I was critical of some of China's actions in Africa.
Jeez, okay.
There's somebody who used to work for me who cites. I don't know if you're familiar with the name Ben Norton, or the organization Gray Zone.
Nope.
They works with a guy known as Max Blumenthal and Glenn Greenwald. Are you familiar?
I know Greenwald, yes.
Well, basically, let me put it this way: if you looked at these three people, Glenn Greenwald is the person you'd want to hug.
Okay.
Gray Zone is basically like, these Uyghurs, like, let's really get into it, right? Or
sure.
This Assad stuff, let's really get into these gas attacks, right? That's the type of stuff they push. Gray Zone is a really just. Let me put it this way: they basically find okay. Let me put it this way: Ben Norton went to Venezuela, went to a Venezuelan luxury mall where there was luxury watches, videotaped in there where rich people in Venezuela were still shopping fine, and said, "Look, what's the problem?" And then he showed footage of a marketplace, which it was like, "Hey, see this apple is like $2," not knowing that $2 is like a badillion like Venezuelan dollars, like trying to present it as like everything's fine. And I had a friend who literally used to work for me when I was working on a campaign, literally used to be like my right-hand man, and he cites the Gray Zone and this like anytime I brought up what happened with the Uyghurs, or I would talk about Hong Kong, and he'd be like, "Well, I mean, like CIA operation," and I would just be baffled.
That's all, dude. The CIA is the QAnon to left-leaning people. Unironically, dude, the CIA is like the most powerful fucking organization, and they do literally everything. It's unreal, but somehow they're constantly being thwarted by people on Twitter and YouTube, I guess. But
this is why I mostly make content with right-wingers, because I want to concentrate the vast majority of my content, like combating right-wing ideas, because I have a deep hope and sincerity that I hope this is mostly online stuff, and I want to concentrate my work in doing stuff in the real world, right? Like I just started as a financial director for a 2022 campaign, which I'm really excited to announce. I'm trying to do more work around that. But like anytime I see this, it feels like it's gonna drag me in, you know?
Yeah.
It's so infuriating. I don't know. It just gets me, and I don't The thing is, remember when I talked to you about Bolivia, and I made the argument to you that it was a coup because if you look at like the vast majority of the characteristics, it falls under it, and we had the thing. In that, I used all information that was publicly available, and I didn't speculate on anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, like, if looking back with the amount of indigenous people that were murdered by Anez and all that, I would think like, oh, it looks like I was pretty on point.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's a lot of people who look at the situation and have just been like, if I don't know how they do this, but they just say it's CIA, it's a given, with zero fucking evidence. And I remember having like a 2-hour debate with somebody about that, and just baffled because they could say, well, if you look at historical trends, it was probably them, with just zero evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Just the idea that right-wing fascists or terrible, terrible people could not do terrible, terrible things without the CIA being involved.
Yeah, and the crazy thing too that ironically enough, I picked up from the lefties was I got screamed at to read history so many times, and I actually, I had such a higher view of like socialism and communism and those regimes until I actually started to read up on like what was happening. Because basically, my view of the world, even being like a neoliberal / SOCDEM, I just assumed like America did a whole bunch of horrible fucking shit overseas all the time to like fuck over like other regimes, and that's just what America did. But it was way more two-sided than that in almost like every circumstance. Like there's like foreign affairs is just really messy coming from all sorts
Here's a
of.
great example. When we talk about the war in Afghanistan, I could talk about the recent reports about the Australian SAS, or them posing with like legs, or I could talk about like the dropping a mother of all bombs, or I could talk about our mismanagement of funds, or I could talk about how Donald Rumsfeld, while going into Afghanistan, he was asked like, Pakistan, and do you know the history between Pakistan and like the Taliban at all, or the
Not that well, no.
Basically, Pakistan was just like, how about we support that? That's the most simple way to put it.
Sure.
Basically,
I mean, we found bin Laden in
all-
Pakistan, right? So that's not
yeah,
surprising. Right?
all the bad guys went to Pakistan, and then they came back, and then they went back and forth, and it's really complicated. But that's all you need to know. And Donald Rumsfeld was like asked, like in private, like, so what do you have to? What should we do? What about Pakistan? Are they our ally? He said, I don't know, and like laughed about it. And then we just went in, and we just never fucking addressed it, if whether they were going to be our ally in the region or not. She's like, I don't know. They could be. They couldn't be. Who knows? Let's go in. Just not having game plans for these things. Things that Barbara Lee brought up at the time. I can criticize all that. And about 180,000 people to 200,000 people died in the war in Afghanistan. A terrible amount. Over 1 million were killed in a war half the length during the Soviet campaign. If you pull up, and I do recommend you do this, if you pull up the population of Afghanistan, check between the dates 1979 and 1989, you literally see the population of Afghanistan fucking dip. It's insane.
Yeah.
And these are things that, see that shit? It's fucking wild. And these are things that are just never talked about. And I just don't understand. I feel like a lot of people, I don't like imperialism. It's alt imperialism's fine. It's like the people who support like China, what they're doing in the South China Sea, or like try to make excuses for the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Like, no, they were actually supporting a government that called them in, and they won't bring up the assassination of certain things. And it just feels like, well, no, imperialism fines. It's just alt imperialism. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like alternative imperialism. It's like, I fucking hate your Coca-Cola. I hate those carbonated drinks. Let me go get my Pepsi.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
I hate that. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like my whole life I've been a useful idiot for other groups of people. I do that really well, I guess. It just kind of disappoints me. Because I figured.
Be a useful idiot. Anyway, you want to come on my show?
Yeah. Wait, when is it?
I was just.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Yeah, because somebody asked me to go on something Saturday. I don't know if it was yours or not, but I'm gonna be in Omaha. Yeah, it feels like, because I was so confident in saying things like, oh, like, okay, because like a lot of people, especially like my mom arguing with her, she's like, oh, like a lot of Democrats, a lot of the Democrats, they just hate America. That's all they care about is just hating America. And it's like, Mom, it's not about hating America, okay? It's about helping people. It's not about hating rich people, okay? It's about helping poor people. But like, I don't know, man. A lot of the rhetoric I see from the more kind of like extreme level is literally just like, fuck America. That's it. That's my whole politics is fuck America. That's all there is.
Kind of in like a little scuffle with like Bad Empanada. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Oh God, I hate that guy.
And basically, I was, Mel, I don't know what to say, but the DPRK, Tanky, Twitter.
Chaos is Mel? Yes, I hate that person too.
I had like a 20-minute, nobody go fucking fuck with her. She's been getting a lot of shit recently, so just, leave her alone. Everybody, please. So I had a discussion with her, and I had this long thing like, why are you not calling this a genocide? And I was like, because she was saying if it's a genocide, and we had a back and forth about it. And a clip of it was posted on Twitter, and everyone was like, whoa, that's really weird that you wouldn't call it that. Like Bad Empanada, instead of like reacting to that, saw I had American flag in my background. It was like, look, this
Oh.
ultra nationalist piece of shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was like a Twitter back and forth for like half of a day about whether me saying I love my country makes me an ultra nationalist.
Sure.
And I was like, well, when I say I love my country, I love it because I want my people to have health care and and all this. And it was like, so you don't think other people should have health care? And it was, I'm just listening to this and just thinking to myself, like, holy shit, like, you make Rush Limbaugh's job so easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and that was like, I had a really nasty moment when I was with my mom. Just a personal feeling that like, because it was the last time I was there and we started arguing over political stuff. And just because I was definitely more informed this time than I was the time before. And I'd noticed that there were like so many stories that she was bringing up, and I had to walk back so much stuff that like the media had kind of said that I was like, okay, yeah, like this was kind of a lie. Like this didn't look too good. Like, yeah, mom, but like you got to trust me on the rest of this shit. And I felt so stupid doing it because I was like, if I was my mom, I wouldn't fucking believe me. Like, Jesus Christ. Like you can only tell so many fucking lies before it's like, yeah.
Yeah. It's that's another thing. I really, and this is something I can actually talk about, which is I would say is more not like a left wing dream. Whataboutisms have fucking been getting to me like a lot. Like I'll talk about something. The weirdest version of it happened today. So I'm used to like me like bringing up what happened in the Capitol when someone's like, "What about Portland?" Right? I'm used to that by now. And usually how I deal with it, which I think is the best way to deal with it, is just to be like, "Yeah, it was bad too." Anyway, back to the Capitol, right? Which I think just doing that quickly is the best way to deal with it, because if you try to dodge or do this or do that, then they'll be like, look, you're justifying that, but justifying that, hypocrite much, and they like the shit in green appears, and you have to deal with that. But in this instance, it wasn't. I used totally different sources to talk about how white nationalism is a legitimate security threat. Here's some like data on this if you ever want to use it. Over 50% of minority service members have said they've seen white nationalism and white supremacy and racism within the military. And this is increasing numbers from a few years ago. Now it's 1 in 3 of overall service members are saying the same thing. Our military continues to see this as an escalating threat. White nationalism is now polling as the same level of a threat to America when you ask service members as ISIS and Al Qaeda. The same, the fucking towers.
No.
And like the next people in line is literally the Islamic Republic of Iran. So this is an increasing threat, according to military personnel. This is an increasing threat according to the U.S. military, and I can give you government reports of what neo-Nazis try to send data to from within the military to neo-Nazi groups, so they can cause mass casualty events that kill thousands of our soldiers. Like this is a legitimate security threat. And there was this thing a while ago about a stand down order that the military was going to. I'm sorry if I'm just bombarding you with information.
No, go for it.
About a. You said that so soullessly.
I'm just listening. Yeah.
I got you. So there was a stand down order that the military kind of put in place, so they can be like, hey, we should probably deal with this whole white supremacy, this whole extremism thing. But a specific thing they brought up white supremacy, right? And so like Rob Noor and a few others was like, this kind of feels like it's going to just be used against Trump supporters, right? Sure. And I had this like back and forth with him over it, and then after, because he was like scared that they were going to use this as like a thing to, I don't want to misrepresent him, as a thing to kind of profile supporters because this senator said something about white people. And I was just so blown away, and that wasn't even the weirdest one, because then the data that was being cited, like this data that's being cited about white supremacy, isn't even data I cited. They brought up a report that I never mentioned to counter me about how I was talking white supremacy, that other people had cited a report incorrectly. I didn't, and that was somehow being used against me.
I would say, just from my personal perspective, confused. I don't trust that. I think the Rob guy is on Demon Mama's level tier of like very, very, very bad faith actor. But that's just been every single encounter I've ever had with him. Maybe he's different with you.
Okay, let me Okay, here's something I think I might disagree with you on. I think that it actually might make sense to enact with bad faith actors and actually have interactions with them.
Yeah, it can if you can like control yourself doing it. I don't disagree with
Yeah.
you actually at all there. But the only reason why I'm worried about certain bad faith actors is because if I do interact with them, I want it to be in an environment where I have control of the conversation. So my rule is that I won't interact with them on other shows. I don't want to be like on a 12-person panel with Rob because if he starts saying some crazy shit, I can't
Counter it.
I can't catch him out on anything. Yeah, because there's too many
This
people.
is something I actually 100%. I think I've started to agree with you on that. There's certain people that in roundtable formats you just can't let run wild because they'll dominate the conversation and say so much you can never interact with it.
And it's way too much.
It's a lot easier to cause a mess than to clean it up. So when somebody spreads disinformation, it takes you 10 minutes to like take apart something that somebody says in 10 seconds, and they've already said 20 things.
Yeah.
And you're never gonna have the amount of time to respond to all of it, and you're never gonna get the notepad out, and it's a fucking disaster. Like for instance, I know you were, fuck, I don't know if I ever brought this up to you. You were on Tim Pool's show, right?
Yeah, one time, yeah.
Did I bring up the pipeline stand thing to you yet?
Pipeline-istan?
So when he was there, while you were on his show, Tim Pool was bringing up the idea that we got involved in Syria due to a pipeline.
Oh, this is a comment. Ryan Dawson has brought this up before.
Yes.
The idea was that we wanted to run a pipeline.
Through the Qatari government, basically made a proposal to the Assad government, like, hey, we're going to do this pipeline thing, and it's going to be really
And
cool.
Israel and Turkey were threatened by their control of the Mediterranean, so they wanted to go fuck everything up related to that or some shit.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a million problems wrong with this conspiracy theory. It has to do with how pipelines work and how this would actually be extremely difficult to even function. When you talk about because this is also the idea is that Iran had a separate pipeline that they were proposing, and we were scared of that being formed. And that's also had to do with undermining Russia's energy stuff. There's a million problems with whether this pump pipe would even function, but the nations involved, and actually some of them that would need to be exporting oil here that are importing oil. We could talk about how Assad has never publicly talked about this being a thing that even happened, and most certainly has never talked about it being a reason. And if you were Bashar al-Assad, wouldn't you want to bring this the fuck up? And it's kind of weird that dumb fucks on the internet figured out it was all for a pipeline, but the literal leader of the Syrian government, who would want to use this a million times over, has never used it. We could talk about how we don't really actually have an official evidence that the meeting for the Qatari pipeline even happened. Technically, I have to go back and check that one again. But I think it was just from a kind of like a Russian report, like a byline, and it was never real evidence. There's a million problems with this, right? And I also wanted to tell you that just so I can send you sources on it if you want to, if you ever got to talk to one of these people again.
I believe you, but yeah.
Oh, thank you for the trust. But
well, I mean, what you're saying is like logically follows, right?
Yeah.
Like, if this was something that Assad saw happening, it feels like he would publicize this to get people on his side, if for no other reason than for propaganda, right? Yeah.
But Ryan Dawson figured it out, and Tim Pool figured it out, but the literal government of Syria did not. So there's a million problems with it. 20 of which I haven't even mentioned yet. I can give you this 20-page article about it, but whatever. But the amount of time it takes me to explain why that's wrong, it took Tim Pool 10 seconds to say it.
Yeah, you can lay out bad claims. There's a saying for this. It's like a lie is halfway around the world before the truth even gets up and gets its pants on or something. There's like a saying for that. Yeah.
That's exact. It takes, this is the way somebody put it to me today, and it's really good. It's a lot easier to clean a mess than it is to make one. I mean, it's easier to make a mess than it is to clean one up, right? The idea that it takes you like 20, 30 seconds to make the mess, fucking an hour to clean it up. If you look at like anybody who ever made a mess.
Yeah.
So that's something that's really difficult with me. And there's a few people that I've told to great backlash from them that, hey, I don't think you're good for the roundtable format, but I would still be willing to do 1v1s. And it's really hard to explain to them, of course, like, it's hard for me not to say like kind of like conspiracy theorist piece of shit, but want to come on at another time.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's hard for you to say that.
Yeah, and I think Rob does that a lot. I think Rob is really good with just like laying out like you can be like it can be a question about like some innocuous topic too, and he will just like start laying out like insane conspiracy theories.
Yeah, the thing is, I'd love to defend Rob because I've talked to him a million times on the conspiracy theory thing, but he has said on countless times about how like Assad didn't really guess his people, or I've heard him say, and I directly brought up Pipelinistan today because I thought maybe he'd push back on it, but I've brought up Pipelinistan because I've heard him say the similar thing, and I'm just like standing there just baffled because when when you bring someone on when you're on a platform, you're not prepared for these conversations, because the conversations you need to have once somebody said something like that,
Mm-hmm.
you need to be prepped for.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if I just brought somebody on my show, right, and out of nowhere they're just like, so when we talk about gas chambers, really,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for
What
sure.
you're not prepared for that. What the fuck do you do?
Mm-hmm.
Like that level of conspiracy, I'm just not ready for. I know you're wrong. I would like to say you're wrong, but then I say like, dude, that's a conspiracy theory. That's insane. And then they say prove it. Then what the fuck do you do?
Yeah, you're
At
kind
that
of
point,
fucked.
like I guess, do you stop the show? But then does that just give them ammunition to be like, hey, I'm a truth teller. I was silenced. Da da da.
Yeah, of course.
Like
Yeah.
like what? You're just in a position of where if you, no matter how you play, you lose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is why I don't do conspiracy theorists on panel shows. And then I'll only debate a conspiracy theorist if I've had a lot of time to specifically prep for what they're going to say and everything. And people will call you a coward for it, but like the reality is that like I've always said, like I'll lose a debate against the world's smartest flat earther every single time. And I think I know enough about flat earth now that I could debate most people and win a debate about flat earth. Like I could be the flat earther and win against most people, because you need to have like a lot of very obscure physics knowledge to be able to argue against like a smart flat earther. And yeah,
it's the same thing with foreign policy. Like if somebody says something about foreign policy, like a very common thing that pisses me off is they were all about oil. All these wars were about oil. And that pisses me off because it simplifies extremely complicated topics to just one resource when it has to do with legitimate national security interests. It has to do with trade routes. With when you talk about like certain areas between like Yemen and Somalia and all these other interests. It has to do with domestic voter interests, like the evangelical community. There's a million things that go into it. But when somebody says these wars are all for oil, like
it's pretty simplistic.
It's extremely simplistic, and that's another thing. Things that are simple, people
very
love it.
Yeah, of course.
So
Yeah, when you
easy
can
to
give like
click.
one
You just say,
thing.
it's all for oil, simple, easy. You don't have to ever like think about it again.
Mm-hmm.
It's just for evil. It's all for evil oil, and you don't need to talk about all the other factors that are actually involved in this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't know in terms of misinformation going forward what is gonna happen anywhere. Everything is pretty fucked right now.
You know, this is kind of why my position on like deplatforming has completely changed. Like I think I'm like 100% fine with like Trump being taken off of Twitter. I think I'd be 100% fine with basically a lot of these conspiracy theorists being pulled off of Twitter, because I think the modern media landscape and conspiracy theory is just, with you being able to say anything with no filter and people just believe that shit so quick, it's poison for liberal democracies. It's literal poison, and other countries' governments are exploiting it too. Fucking Russia literally is exploiting it by spreading disinformation during election season to try to get their preferred candidates to win, which people will still say for whatever reason that's a conspiracy theory. Even Trump's own government, its own government reports have proven that they're putting that out.
Yeah. It's crazy that people that was another talking point, that people like Rob will say things like the phony, the Russian investigation. And it's like,
but
dude,
it happened. It's
how,
just legitimate.
And even aside from that, how many people, like it was like 6 major figures. What was it? Like Gates, Papadopoulos, Cohen, Manafort, Stone. Like these are people that are like not now because of the pardons, but like a lot of these people were in federal prison, like because they were fucking guilty, dog. Like, what do you mean it turned out nothing? How do you even say this?
Look, buddy, look, Rachel Maddow said this thing that wasn't right. So what do you think about that?
True. Well,
true. Yeah.
In 2016, did you know that Rachel Maddow said this thing, and there's like one guy that actually knows about this, and that proves the whole. It's like, oh well, you got me.
Yeah.
I guess,
what about the P tapes? That never came up, huh?
True. Yeah.
You think about that?
True.
No. And that's why she fought for Trump. Here's another thing that gets me. Do you think the Hunter Biden thing was a decent strategic move by the Republicans, or like a terrible one? Because I think it's a terrible strategic move. Like the whole Hunter Biden, like putting all their chips in that basket.
I mean, they needed more if they were going to make it work. The problem is nothing juicy actually came out of it, right?
Yeah, it was like the laptop, and they tried to do it. I think it was, the thing is, the conspiracy was too complicated, too unproven, and too just out there, and too difficult to understand.
To be fair, I think every foreign policy related thing that I don't think most actually, I'm positive of this. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Most Americans don't know what happened with Trump and Ukraine. Even like a basic explanation. I don't know if most people would understand.
Yeah.
Just...
Most people don't even understand the Russia shit. They just think, because this is what I see from like the average Democrat would be like, oh, Trump's Putin's bitch, and that'll be it, right?
Yeah, nobody realizes like the Guccifer shit that was like directed by Putin and it infiltrated DNC servers, and we know how this whole thing worked. Like, and then like Assange worked with these people to selectively.
We can look at the disinformation centers that were set up by Putin to spread disinformation.
Yeah, the Internet Research Agency, I think the IRA or whatever, or
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like it's all there.
We can look at all this, but it's so fucking complicated. Nobody's gonna take the time. Not to mention the thing that got me like eventually like maybe say I got into foreign policy eventually out of spite. I had a government teacher who I was arguing with about who we should like support for an office of some sort. And I was like, well, they said this thing about a really aggressive bombing campaign that killed a lot of civilians and that it was pretty bad and da 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 da. And then this is the government teacher at my school. He looks me in the face and says, well, nobody votes on foreign policy anyway, so I'm gonna vote for him.
True.
And it pissed me off so much that even like our government teachers were just completely throwing foreign policy away, even though we have more military bases all around the world than any other country on the planet. We're the most globalized we've ever been, and it's the thing that the president of the United States will have the most control of out of every other avenue. And it's just we have the most powerful empire in the world, but you wouldn't know it if you talked to any American to ever exist.
Sure.
And nobody knows anything about it. It's fucking that shit
Fucking wild, dog.
Pisses me off, because how can we have a voter base, a country that has more military bases around the world than any country on earth? Its economy, if it farts, could cause a depression worldwide if it does it the wrong way. Have part of international agreements, nuclear treaties that could literally end the world if they go haywire. One of the biggest arsenal of nuclear weapons that could destroy the world. The most powerful military to ever exist, the most powerful economy to ever exist. We have the most part of the most powerful military alliance in history. We literally fought the other most powerful empire in the history of the world and won.
I don't think it's a matter of like all power and scale. It's just a matter of complexity. I think that these issues are just like way too complex for the average person to like really.
I know, it's just wild to think of all this, and none of them could basically no Americans, if I showed them a map, could point out all the countries we like even have like troops in, or even have been or technically like engaging in a war in, or know anything that's what's going on with foreign policy.
Yeah, I mean, it's all complicated shit.
Backstabbed an ally that led to politicians getting executed, and nobody even knows what could point out Syria on a map. I don't know. It just pisses me off.
I mean, people don't even understand domestic policy, so I mean, it's not
true.
It's just how it is.
True. Could you point out Syria on a map?
You gnome fuck!
Hold on.
Hey man, thanks
So
for all the
paragraph
sick
finish,
content since the early SC2 days. Never really had the money to sub during the time since I was a kid, but now I finally have a good career. Was watching your podcast with PKA and just wanted to support you for once.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, Syria is south of Turkey. Syria is bordering in west of Iraq.
Well, there you go. Good job.
Thanks, I try.
You're more qualified than 90% of political commentators.
I try to be sometimes. I used to be able to remember some of the cities, I think. Is Aleppo in the northwest part of Syria?
What is Aleppo? that shit still gets me, man.
I think Damascus is like the middle south. Damascus is like western somewhere. I think I used to be able to find this because I had to look at the remember the locations of these places for like Damascus was important for the Ghouta, I think, chemical weapons attacks, and then the UN people that went in to investigate and where they got like shot at by snipers while they were going there. Like, yeah. I know Middle Eastern geography better than U.S. geography at this point.
Yeah, there's Kobane, there's Raqqa, there's a lot of there's a lot of cities in Syria. Who'd have thought? Locations. Did you hear about my my new project with the belt?
With the belt?
With the belt.
No.
The DylanBurnsTV brand belts. No.
I think if I would have heard about that, I probably could have named the belt. So no, I'm gonna continue to say no.
No, I I made a custom wrestling belt for the Hippie Dippy roundtable for like podcasting, and we're going to have it. We're gonna have people debate to like get the belt, and then they'd have to defend it every month or two. And
damn.
it's like a wrestling type event.
And you'd
where
like
people-
ship
people
this
shoot-
around or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, no. We make a custom one for each person.
Oh.
We send them out because a lot of people don't know in boxing. Like you see, like people like lose a boxing match and they pass the belt over. When they get behind closed doors, they actually just give the belt back and they ship the person like a new one in 3 weeks. But obviously that would be a lot less dramatic. So the idea would be that if you win it, you get the actual belt. Like we mail it to you, you have it, and then when you lose it, we mail a new belt to the new person. They're the current champion, and we just do it around, and send it around. And I think it's fun. I think a lot of problems with Twitch, with politics on Twitch, is like
No reigning
people trying to-
champions?
you will have reigning champions.
No, I'm
Whoever
saying
is
that's the
current-
problem with Twitch is there's no reigning champions.
There's
People
no
don't-
reigning. That is
People
one-
don't know who
that
the
is one
true
problem.
debate master is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think
We
it's fun.
Need some goddamn
think-
titles.
It is true. I think the problem is, and I think a lot of people who get onto political Twitch want to make Twitch more like politics when they're talking it, when I think you need to make politics more like Twitch if you want to get people's attention. You got to like make it like flamboyant. You got to make it attention grabby. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Do you think the idea though is toxic?
I don't know. It depends on how the debates are. I think you can have really like vicious debates that are like good. And then you can also have really friendly debates that are shit. So
True. That is true. Do you know what the first one's on?
the first what?
The first match? We already have it scheduled. It's been announced.
Yeah, I think wait, fuck, who was this? I feel like I read this. Either you messaged me this or I saw this on Twitter. Who is
Probably
it?
Twitter.
Is it Bastian somebody or?
Is Vosh v Bastiat.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vosh v
Oh, shit.
Bastiat. Like, it's gonna be debating socialism. Then we'll have that champ, and then they'll
Debating
decide it.
socialism? Just
Socialism versus capitalism.
okay, interesting. All right.
Yeah, well, the thing is, if it's the first match, we got to go back to basics, right?
Sure.
Then you go from there. And the idea is eventually, I want the belt to like go to other communities. Like eventually, I would like to see it like, I want to have like somebody beat maybe a conservative in a debate, and they're like a gaming streamer, and then they can go debate somebody on like what's better, like Bloodborne or the other one. I don't know. What's the other one? Bloodborne and Dark Souls.
Bloodborne, Dark Souls, and Sekiro.
Yeah, which one's better, and they can debate that. And Sekiro, Miyamoto.
Wait, so would Bastia have
Sorry, I
to,
don't
or
know.
Vosh, whoever wins the belt, would they have to continue to debate people on like topics that they're not even remotely well versed in?
No. They would debate people that. Well, the idea is we'd find somebody who overlaps. A great example would be Hutch, right? Hutch talks politics and gaming. So if he won it in a politics match, then he could choose to do. Then we could be like, let's see if we can get a gaming person to win this instead. And we're gonna create a whole ranking system to see so we can try to give smaller streamers like a chance to maybe challenge for it. But the odds of that happening are pretty slim to nil.
Good, fuck small streamers.
For money reasons, because this costs a lot of money to have custom wrestling belts made every few months. Yeah, so I think it's a.
How do you figure out who wins or loses a debate?
That's the
That's the kicker.
that's the tricky part. Obviously, we can't do polling because
The popular
poll
one is
chat.
always gonna win. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's fucking stupid, and somebody could bot it, and there's a million reasons wrong with it. We will still do polling to encourage audience interaction, and the judges can look at that, and the judges are like this. So depending on the community, if it's a gaming community, we try to get 3 people of diverse opinions in the gaming community, and we have 3 judges. One who's strongly on one side of the issue, one who's strongly on the other side of the issue, and one that's kind of in the middle. If you were looking at Twitch, we would have one conservative, one libcuck socialist, and one moderate boy. And then you would ask them all to do their best to leave their emotions at the door and judge. And I can, of course, look at a decision because I have final say at the end of the day and say, that's bullshit, I'll choose. So the buck at the end of the day stops with me, but that's how decisions are going to be made. There's no way that I'm going to be able to make decisions that's not going to piss off somebody.
Yeah, of course.
But this is true of all sports that have wrestling, that have belts. Boxing, it's the same thing. There's no way there's not going to be a decision that pisses off somebody. Wrestling, that's purposeful when it pisses off people, like cheated matches. And you know what? At the end of the day, maybe I'll just be like, this match would make more money and throw it on them because I'm a corrupt wrestling boy. Who knows? Maybe, and it's fun, you know. People hate an establishment figure who beats out the little guy. For example, can I paint you a picture?
Paint, go. I gotta
Look,
sleep soon, just so you know, but go ahead.
Okay, here's a picture. let's say we got somebody, some lovable face, like Lumiru, right? Which this would never happen, right? People love Lumi, right? Lumi's nice. Everybody like posts their emotes all the time in chat. They love Lumi. Versus Lecture Fan, and they do amazing. They beat Lecture Fan on all the points. But then you hear a little shuffling in the background, and I say, a split decision, Lecture Fan, give it to them and end stream just out of nowhere. That would piss so many people off. And Gorgeous George said something a long time ago, old wrestler, that people will pay 10 times more to see somebody they hate lose than somebody they love win.
Sure.
And I think by doing stuff like that, you can bring more attention to it and stuff like that. So, I mean, that might happen, but I'm an honorable man, so who knows?
All right, well, good luck. Don't go too crazy.
Wonderful. Would you want to participate in something like this?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it'd be fun. It's kind of what I do, right?
Wonderful. Okay, I'll put your name down. Who do you think is going to win? Do you want to make a prediction?
That's just such a vague debate. It's hard for me to say. Like,
That's why it's fun.
Socialism versus...
Well, think about the qualities of debaters and think about what do you think they're going to
They're both actually kind of similar. I think Bastia does a lot of kind of soapboxing sometimes, which is really funny. So it'll be a matter of who can do it better, I guess.
And if
Do
you
you
think
hate
this
the
is good,
global poor? Like...
And I think they're both perfect for this wrestling type format too, because they both know how to kind of lean into that type of stuff,
for sure.
right? And they should both be producing promos and sending them to me today, but neither of them have sent them. Means neither of them have done their job, and they're irresponsible.
Yeah. Well.
No.
All right.
Anyway, you have a good night, okay?
Yeah, love you. Be careful, buddy.
Hope I didn't talk you to death.
No, you're good. Thanks for coming in.
You have a nice night.
Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so that my videos show up right in your feed.
You are going the wrong fucking direction. The wrong.
You guys are.
Look,
Thanks.
look,
My
look,
brain is getting
there.
fucked. Yeah, my brain is getting fucked right now. Keep pinging it though. Nice.